Hi, friends. Welcome back to Out of Focus. I'm Shannon Stewart. Today's guest is author, storyteller, and content creator Kendall Moriah. Kendall's new book, This Little Fire of Mine, talks about something she calls soul friction, that tension so many people quietly feel between the life they're living on the outside and what's really happening inside their heart. For years, Kendall followed the formula so many Christian women are taught: be good, make wise choices, stay faithful, trust God, do the right things. But eventually, she found herself wrestling with deeper questions about faith, identity, motherhood, church culture, authenticity, and what it really means to have a relationship with God that's actually alive instead of just looking good from the outside. Today, we're talking about soul friction, adoption, motherhood, social media, asking hard questions, disappointment, identity, and what happens when life unfolds differently than you imagined. I think so many of you are going to feel seen in this conversation. Kendall, I am so excited to have you on the podcast. This is an interesting story. So, I was going to be on My Carolina. And so I told my dad, and while I'm there, I noticed that it's recorded. And so after the show, I call him and he goes, "Yeah, I noticed you weren't on, but they had this girl. She lives in North Carolina and she wrote this book called This Little Fire of Mine. And you should have her on your podcast." And
That is
so
wild.
it's wild, right?
Look at dad. Look
I
at
know.
that
So
being a
thank you,
connector.
Dad.
Yeah, I know. You just never know. And that's so cool how like God works in all those tiny ways. And it's interesting how it's just the right person at the right time. And like your dad of all people.
He's not a Christian yet.
No.
My mom got married when she didn't have a personal relationship with the Lord. She was Catholic, but she wasn't a Catholic that had that personal
Like
relationship.
practicing. Yeah.
Yeah, she just went through the motions, and some family member died, and she started wondering, there has to be more to life than just this. And she went on a search and she started opening the Bible. She was like, I was just so in awe of the scriptures. And he became real to her. And so, yeah, we're still waiting on him, but it's just so funny how he connected us.
Yeah. And that wild how I think that is the coolest thing is how you can see God's already working in his life. And
Yes.
he doesn't have a name for it yet, probably, but that he can discern or say, oh, like what I'm getting from Kendall is a similar energy and vibe as in my daughter. They must be similar. And we would describe that as like the light of God in us or Jesus, the Holy Spirit working in our lives to make us have those similarities. And to him, it's just like nothing. It's just like, oh, they're kind of similar, but there's a commonality. And it's funny how, to me, I recognize that as God is already working through him. He just doesn't have maybe the name or recognize it yet. But hopefully, his story will be in days or years from now when he does come, he can say, you know what? Maybe I was already getting a touch of that before.
If you heard his story, he felt angels. He was on a cliff taking a picture years and years ago, and he felt arms around him, lifting him back up because he said he was gone. His car he was driving in the rain flipped several times, and he heard a voice that said, "You're going to be okay." And he said nothing happened. So he's been used greatly in my life to get me to do things God wanted me to do. And I kind of changed my mind or maybe had cold feet or something, and I wasn't willing to take that leap of faith. So it's so funny how we assume God can only use believers.
No, he uses anybody.
Anybody. He says the king's heart is in his hand and he can turn it like a channel of water to do his will.
That's right. We're all vessels.
Yes. So you use the phrase soul friction in your book. What does that mean to you personally?
Yeah, I just always had this literal feeling in my body that when something just didn't feel quite right, like sometimes it would just be like, I don't know if I agree with that, or as we say nowadays, like the math wasn't mathing. Like it was like this spiritual discernment is now is what I know it to be. But as a child, of course, you don't have that vocabulary. But I would literally have like a heat rash kind of come up on me. Or it was sometimes this friction where it was less of a physical feeling, but it was like something I could not get out of my head that was bothering me or was heavy on my spirit, where I was like, okay, wait, like what is going on? And now I know it's like God was trying to draw my attention to something, either in that specific moment spiritually or in that season where I couldn't get rid of something. But that's just always been kind of my nature, is what comes up comes out. And now I know it's a lot of the way God made me and being neurodivergent. And I just naturally don't have some of those social norms and filters. But from a very young age, I just always felt not only a connection with God, but I could acknowledge that the Holy Spirit was working in my life and see those patterns, even though I didn't have the spiritual formation to really understand what that meant or give it all the fancy words. And I've questioned everything, but I've never questioned whether God was real or not, because to me that is as duh as like, is there a sunshine? Like, because I've always known it was true since I was a little girl. So the soul friction is being the good Christian girl, doing all the right things at the right time, and having seasons of, but God, you didn't show up the way other Christians told me you would, or I didn't get the results I was promised, or I thought I would get because of certain teachings I had or certain cultural norms I held. And so it can be a moment, self-friction can be a season. And I think we've all had them. We just might not have had a name for it.
Yeah, I completely have that because I obeyed and I was thinking it was going to produce certain
For
outcomes.
sure.
And then I started questioning almost like he was a vending machine. You told me to do this. I did it. Where's the outcome? Where's the job?
I'm
Where's
doing the
the open
correct,
door?
yeah, I'm doing the correct input. Where's the output?
Yes. No, you were raised in the church.
I was. I'm currently serving as deacon at the same church I was born and raised and married in. And so we've moved all around. My husband's military, so we've been around the country and back, but we're now still back in the same church.
That is so awesome. Do you think a lot of women are carrying that tension of soul friction without even knowing how to describe it?
Oh, for sure. I mean, especially in this day and age where we're around, oh my gracious, I can't imagine just how amplified it was for you during the early 2000s with like body image. Culturally, we got a very specific message of body image in the early 2000s. And, spiritually, there was the movement of the purity culture.
I
All,
remember that.
right, all happening simultaneously. And so for women at a very transformative time in our life where, everything's really getting cemented in and who we are, what our identity is, we're getting the message of you're too big, you're too loud, you're a temptation. It was like my body was something that was too much, was a temptation for guys, or, I was told everything was wrong with my body, then go over to culture, and culture didn't make me feel any better about it because culture was saying I needed to be a size 2, or if you were bigger than a size 2, you were too big. There was just all these mentalities. And I've talked to so many friends and women that are millennials that are now in our 30s and 40s, finally figuring out it's okay to be at home in my body, to listen to my body. God created it as a vessel for a reason, and it works in a certain way for a reason. But we carried so much shame because we were told it was too much, too little, too small, not right. Or be careful, don't use your body in this way, but you should use it in this way. And there were so many missed messages. So, I mean, that is one example that I think women, we all have body image struggles, whether it's dysmorphia or eating disorders. And our bodies go through so many changes through adolescence to if you've carried children, or just even the way our cycles work. Our body's going to look different at 25 than at 45 when we're in perimenopause. It's just different. And then things too, if you got the messaging in church that a lot of your identity as a woman was to be a mother and you chose not to be, or like for me, I just couldn't get pregnant. My body is incapable of that. Then my worth was tied in that. And there's a friction in that. And God, I'm doing the right things. Why aren't you rewarding me with my heart's desire? Why I'm checking the boxes, and it wouldn't happen. So I think we all have it in some form. It's the things that are the questions we want to ask God. Maybe it stems from questions or doubt, but I definitely think we've all got it to some degree.
Yeah, I had body dysmorphia and an eating disorder.
Yeah.
I was chunky in 6th grade. I never wore jeans. I always
Oh,
wore those
no.
stirrup pants with the little thing on the bottom of your foot.
Yeah.
And then I had a growth spurt and I started liking my new figure a little too much and I wanted to keep it. So I greatly restricted what I ate. And then I wanted to be a model and I saw the girls on the runway, Kate Moss and all the super thin ones with the long, lean legs. And so I thought that was the ultimate goal for me, was to look like that.
Right. And we lived in a society at that time that rewarded that.
Yes. Those were the only girls you saw in the magazines or on the commercials, in the ads, were that kind of look. And I'm so glad now in culture, they embraced different sizes and ethnicities.
Oh, yeah. The diversity is good.
It's a lot better.
Yeah. Because that's how God created our world. Our world and our bodies aren't meant to be monolithic. My daughter's African American, and I think about just that all the time, like how important it is for her to see people not to just look like her or look like me, but just look all kinds of differently, because I think it expands all of our minds as to what is good, what is loved by God, and it just reinforces to her that I'm good and loved by God in the unique ways that He has made me.
I think a lot of listeners would relate to that, especially moms that can't have kids. I don't have any kids, so I knew the pressure that we do put on women because it does say, be fruitful and multiply. Does God still think the same of me as he does this other woman?
Exactly. Exactly. And that's been a lot of my pushback with some people that are maybe more fundamental in their thinking about what it means to be a woman who's a quote unquote good Christian woman, whatever that means, or a woman in ministry. There's people that will kind of draw the connections of like, well, is she really doing right by God if God's not blessed her womb in the way that she desires? Because so many people have correlated our wants and our needs and our prayer life to the success of it, to our worth. Again, because we have the vending machine mentality that if bad things happen, some people think that's because
Sin.
right.
But look at Job,
Right, exactly.
blameless.
Right. And so I think that for so many of us that go through infertility or even choose not, because it is a personal conviction, I think, of many women and men too, that just for whatever reason God puts it on their heart that they can't. I think it's such an unfair assumption to believe that the favor of God is not still on them. For so many generations, women and within church culture has been based on their ability to be fruitful and multiply. Her children rise up and call her blessed, and she's blessed because she has multiple children. There's movements that have been really big in pushing it with not just having children, but having many children and the pressure. We went from purity culture telling us, don't have sex, don't be a temptation, don't do this, to getting married and realizing we are at a national crisis of infertility and issues at the same time of being told it's your fault that you can't get pregnant. Or maybe this is because of sin you had in the past, or maybe it's because of choices that you made. When I think for women, we can't win for losing sometimes within the church culture or within even just relationships without everyone in that dialogue and that conversation just having humility and saying, God convicts us all differently. God blesses us all differently. And parenthood and motherhood comes in all forms. It's not to say that the grandmother raising her granddaughter is any less of a mother figure to that daughter, or it's not to say either the script doesn't flip that the woman that has multiple children out of wedlock is way more favored. And that was really hard for me. And I think many women that go for infertility are like, if this is a product of my prayer life, then why is God blessing people who are not following the rules? But that I think that really speaks to more of maybe how we were taught or what we were caught within Christian culture about that prayer exchange, like you talk about input and output.
If you read the Bible, you can see a lot of wicked people, they prosper
Oh, right.
because they get their portion in this life. I don't want my portion in this life. I want my crown of glory in heaven one day with jewels all over it. And I look at the children I watch in my children's ministry at our church as my children. I pour into them. So, yeah, just because I'm not technically a mother and I didn't give birth to kids, he's given me other kids.
Absolutely. No, I believe that 100%. I had the privilege to do the children's sermon at church this Sunday for Mother's Day. And that was one of the concepts I wanted to introduce to the children was the idea of spiritual mothers. We have so many women, elders in our church, ladies that chose not to have children or never married, but play such active roles in my life. Like, as a child growing up in the church that poured into me or showed up for me in different ways. And I think one thing our generation right now is really craving is that village. And we talk about a loneliness epidemic, all these things, when it's like, you're looking for it in such a picture perfect idea, or you're looking for this formula that looked nuclear or made sense to you in the 90s. But really, I think God, in His graciousness, evolves that with every season and every cultural shift and shows us it could look different. Our village might look different, but that makes it richer and more valuable and intergenerational. And like I said, motherhood comes to us in all different ways. And I don't think it's any less because the more people there are to love children, we have an open adoption with my daughter, and some people can't quite understand that. But I said, who am I to deny a child more love in their life in this world that is so hateful and dark? If there's more people that want to love on her, then that is my job to help steward and facilitate those
What is
relationships.
an open adoption?
So that means that, it was really big in the 80s, 90s, and previous that you had the option. Most people opted to have a closed adoption, meaning once a city was signed over, everything was kind of sealed in the court who the biological family was. And open adoption means that we have an open line of communication between ourselves and the biological family. For some people, they do that through their adoption agency. But for us, it was important to have that direct contact because we never want our daughter to feel like we were keeping her from her biological family or that there was something to hide on their part or our part. And the way that she's 6 now that I explained it to her is that there's just some seasons of our lives we have to ask other people to help us. And Mama J asked us to help her by my husband Justin and I choosing to be her parents and to raise her. But that doesn't make her less of her mother. And she gets to have a wonderful relationship with her family still. But it just means that God kind of widened the net for her and was gracious in that. Because I think one thing we don't realize is the way that we treat relationships like that could be contentious or complicated, often is the best reflection of how our children will grow up and see what we truly believe about God and who we think he is based on how we treat other people.
With the open adoption, is the mom ever able to get her back?
No.
Okay.
No. So,
It's just a communication thing.
And relationships. So Zadie has an iPad now, and she has 4 contacts in the iPad. It's, myself, my husband, my mom, and Mama J, so that she can send text or videos or they can communicate
I love that.
anytime. And hopefully it will continue to give her a confidence in knowing that she's blessed to not just have one mom, but 2.
That's so sweet. I love it. Did you always know you wanted to be a mother?
Yes and no, in the sense that I always knew that adoption would be a part of my story, and not in the that's a weird thing to say because I think adoption is such a complicated thing. Let's say like you want brokenness. Adoption is not born out of a good thing. It's born out of hurt, brokenness, lack. And when people are like, I feel like I've always wanted to adopt, and I felt that way too, we have to be careful with those words because that's saying, I want someone else to go through something difficult so that I can be on the receiving end. I did have a knowing for a long time that that was what I foresaw happening. And so much of it in God's timing. My husband and I were engaged, and the week before Thanksgiving, we were doing our pre-marriage counseling, but we had to do it online because my husband was stationed in another state. And it would just happen to be that week was the week we were supposed to talk about family planning. And I remember saying that I was not one to think that I wanted to have a lot of kids, but I did feel really strongly that I wanted to adopt. And if he didn't feel that way, that was probably not going to be good. And we had been together 6 years at that point, and he told our counselor, he's like, no, I actually, and this is not being funny, but he has a phobia of pregnant women. I don't know, one too many Alien versus Predator movies, but he was like, no, adoption sounds perfect, which he comes from a very blended family. He had adopted siblings. And that was like the end of the discussion. The counselor kind of looked at us like, don't you want to talk more about it? And he was like, you want to do adoption? I was like, yeah. And he's like, okay, cool. Yes, perfect. And moving on. We didn't end up starting the process until 6 years later because prayer, discernment, timing, all that is important. Saving to go into that process because it's definitely an investment. But I was never a little girl that dreamed of being pregnant. And I think that has probably been the biggest source of peace for me, being infertile. And even though I have battled whether I want to be infertility out of pride, am I trying to prove the doctors wrong that told me I would never get pregnant? Or I'm trying to get pregnant because I truly feel like that's what God's called me to, is to have a biological child, or that is our path. But it always takes me back to the feelings that I had as a teenager. And my mom would tell you, like, she just never saw me having children, like literally having children. And so it's a both and kind of weird thing. A week later, I had emergency surgery and found out I may never have children. So I had no infertility problems. I had a large ovarian cyst the size of a Nerf football. And we went into surgery and they told me I may be having a complete hysterectomy at the same time, which is crazy to hear at 22. When you've really, we had that one
You look 22 now.
Oh, we had that one conversation a week before. And now I'm like, but now you're telling me I can't. And I'm one of those people, if you tell me I can't, like that is, nothing's going to light a fire under my butt faster.
Is that where your line comes from? Don't tell me I can't?
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was from about the kids?
Yes. Yes. Trying to prove it wrong. Battling with the, I'm not going to be that statistic. And it, too, in faith, believing that God can do for one, for me.
Amen.
And it only takes one. And I felt that in my spirit and been confident in that. Through our adoption process, we were told it would take 2 years. It took 90 days. We were told it would take 50 profile looks by 50 different moms because they get to choose which will be their child's parent. Only one. And it was God wing after like alignment thing that was just weird, weird after weird, where it was only God could have done it. We were in the second round of profile books because Mama J originally didn't see anybody she trusted in the first pile, and she requested another pile, and the group was like, "You've got a lot of great options here." And she's like, "It's not, I don't feel right." And we hadn't finished our profile book yet, and it just happened timing that we were in that second round. And so it's just been that serendipitous, God orchestrated thing. Like I was told I would need a hysterectomy at 30. I still haven't done it yet because my health is good. Otherwise, it's a lot of just putting up with right now. But until I've just received clarity of like, okay, it's time to release and let that season go so that I can focus again on going back through the adoption process. But for the last 3 or 4 years, it's the, I'm getting older. And if I've only got one ovary, I've only got so many eggs left in my basket, for lack of better words.
So do you guys want more kids?
Yes, I think my husband and I could be at peace with one because I mean she's perfection.
She's beautiful.
Thank you. Like I mean she's so good. And my husband was like, lightning doesn't strike twice, Kendall. It's hard to figure out exactly what the path is. We went through a adoption process again 3 years ago, and again it didn't work out. It was one of those situations, and it plays messy games with you mentally. Is your faith is like, was I not hearing God right?
That would be hard
Because we truly see adoption as a ministry. And one of the things that God has taught us is like, if you're not willing to trust me in this whole process and lose all your money, then you're not really called to it. And that's the hard conversations I have a lot with people who are interested in adoption. And I'm like, do you want to adopt because you want to be parents or because you feel called to the ministry of adoption? Because the ministry of adoption is a lifelong process. You're going to facilitate a relationship that sometimes, thankfully we have a wonderful relationship with Zadie's biological mom, but you're not guaranteed that. It could be difficult or it could be complicated. And I'm sure we'll go through seasons of that as Zadie gets older. Because, I mean, raising kids is hard in even the best circumstances or normal circumstances, whatever that means. But you've got to be willing to put it all on the line and walk away. And one of the things that God revealed to us in that process of, walking away from $25,000 and knowing we would never get it back. And God made it clear we don't ask for it back. We let it ride. Is that we were planting seeds to a mom that us going through the process with her and supporting her financially for a few months and going through that season of building a relationship with her and her having counselors is what ultimately gave her the confidence that she could do it, that she had enough bandwidth because those needs were getting met, that she could make the right decisions and connect her with the right people to make the decision for her and her child. Because if we think about it realistically, God's perfect plan would be that a child is always with their mother, right? And so anytime that we get to be a part of allowing that to happen, what a blessing. Again, it's one of those things that we'll never see that $25,000 again on this side of heaven. But I know that we were sowing into the kingdom by doing it, by walking away. And I have taken people along online with that journey. And I think that was a difficult pillar for some people that don't view adoption that way. Like she was taking you for a ride, or people take people for advantage. And listen, that is true. I'm sure there are those instances.
I know some adoptive parents don't allow them to speak to their biological parents because of the toxicity.
Yeah, and
that
that's
aspect.
and that's difficult. My concern has just always been that at some point Zadie's going to be a grown woman. We're going to change chairs, and I really truly believe your kids will always figure you out. And I don't want to be a barrier between her and something that is so natural to have a relationship with. Now, I can be protective and we can have boundaries and we can make choices that keep her safety at best. But again, I don't want her to ever feel like we kept her from anything. And even if things were really complicated and toxic, I would never say a word about that in front of her. Because again, she'll figure it out. Kids will figure things out.
They do. They're
And they're
smart.
so
They're
smart.
so smart.
And I have to trust that in the same way that God worked in my life and continue to reveal himself to me through her story, that he's going to do the same for her. If I doubt that, then I doubt what God is capable of. And he's not who I say he is. But I think he can redeem and rescue all of that. I think for those people that don't allow it, I would tell them just to search their heart of what seed could I be planting that could potentially be something that my child gets to reap years down the road. Because my thing is, if you're a Christian people and you're called to adoption, you may be the only example of Christ they ever run into. And would Christ hold something back or taunt them with it or say, hey, no, you sign the paper and walk away? That is not the atmosphere that Jesus created when he walked into rooms. And I would much rather have to have difficult conversations with my daughter when she's a teenager and explain why we had some boundaries in place. But for her to say, well, Mom, thanks for at least having the door open. I'm not talking about, we're not co-parenting, we're not swapping or anything like that. But if she has questions about simple things like, I'm so glad I can call her biological mom and say, hey, we're at the doctor. She's got this rash. Do you also deal with eczema? Or psoriasis, anything? And she's like, yes, girl, I'm allergic to aloe. We figured out it don't work for Zadie either. Like, what a gift.
Very helpful.
Yeah, like a resource, really. I mean, good gracious. And so, really kind of searching our hearts in it, because God certainly had to work in ours. Because we first went into the adoption process thinking, oh, yeah, clothes sound like the better idea, because then you don't have other people to worry about. But God really softened our hearts on that one.
Was there ever tension between the life you imagined for yourself and the life God actually gave you?
I'm living every dream I've ever had. I live in the exact house I picked out when I was in second grade. Exact house. In a way that God only wrote. Okay, I'll give you the quick of it. So it's a house on our little main street of our town. It's an old colonial home. A friend of mine lived there when she was in elementary school. And I just thought, this is incredible. Like, this is my house one day. In high school, I told my grandfather, who's now passed, like, I'll live in the house one day. And he's the only person, and he was my person, like, that never made me feel crazy for having the most audacious dreams of, like, he's like, oh, yeah, you'll do that. Like, for sure. Like, that'll happen. And, I come from a town of, like, 3,000 people where, like, all of this sounds, like, crazy. And I said, no, I'll live in that house one day. My husband's military, so we've moved all around.
How did you guys meet?
High school. Okay, well, I was paid $20 to date him. And we can come back to that in a minute.
Wait, what?
Yeah. Yes.
Who paid you 20?
His best friend. Because I just had there was no interest. I was the big picture girl. Like, I wanted to move to New York or Atlanta, a bigger city. I wanted to be in the magazine industry. Like, that's
like a fashion editor?
my dream was to have a Christian girls magazine, like a Cosmo for girls.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah, like something like that. Editorial, advice columns, but also style, all those kinds of things. I have a mock-up of it at my mom's house, my parents' house still. It's called like Glambition or something like that. Isn't that funny?
I love it.
Like where you're glamorous but you're ambitious at the same time.
Yes.
But yeah. So I had no desire to find a husband or date. And my idea of dating with somebody was finding a husband. I was like, well, I don't want to date anybody. I'm in the 9th grade. I've got things to do. I'm definitely not dating anybody from my hometown. That's going to make things complicated. But obviously things worked out. And what I found out quickly, even as a teenager, is what makes you most compatible, I think, with somebody is how comfortable you can be with them. And I didn't have the verbiage for it now or then, but I do now. And my husband is one of the only people that I can unmask from totally. And I recognize that in small ways. Like, he and I broke up for a month and a half in high school one time, and I was on a date with another guy. And we were riding around to that guy's pickup. And I was like, do you ever just look outside and see a pond and think, where did that pond come from? Like, was it a meteor? Is it man-made? And like, I'm a verbal narrator. Like, I'm just sitting here processing. He looked at me like I was the biggest idiot. No, kiddo, I've never once thought about where a pond comes from. Why are you worried about where? That just made me feel so stupid. And I looked at him and I said, Justin would have never made me feel stupid. Can you take me home? And he was just like, because of course I was angry at Justin. I talked a bunch of crap about him because it's what you do about your high school boyfriend. But I can tell you what road we were on when it happened, because it was such a revelation of like, that's not how it's supposed to be. I could ask all these silly questions. Just there was that level of comfortability with Justin from day one where we could be silly and goofy and ask.
So did you go on the date because of $20 and then things evolved from there?
Yeah, yeah, essentially. It was because it was just a friendship. I would never went into it thinking it was going to be a romantic relationship.
Isn't that the best though? Because you can be yourself and
Oh,
you're
it was,
not
and
trying to put
exactly.
on some kind of
There was no
performance.
airs. I was
Yes.
like, "I'm doing you a favor by being here." He didn't know about the vet though for like 6 months into it because no one thought it would probably go that far. But then he was like, "Are you serious? You didn't like me?" I was like, "No, you got on my nerves. We were doing a play together." I was like, "No." I just didn't have any interest in dating, period. It's not that I thought he was a terrible person or anything. I was just not interested. So back to the house. We got stationed in Nashville, right outside of Nashville. So we were there for 4 years. And I really thought that's where my dreams were going to come true because, again, my dream was to write a book. Nashville is the number one Christian publishing town in
Yes.
the world. And I was like, oh my gosh, God has brought us here. I made connections with people that I was like, wow, okay, this is like God putting everything together. And then when orders came that we were leaving, or we found out we were going to get orders to leave, I was like, what do you mean? I don't have the ticket yet. I don't have the golden ticket for the book deal yet. What do you mean? And my husband was told there was a long shot chance that he would get Fort Bragg. There's dozens of military bases around the world, and Fort Bragg is home for us. And I was like, really? Like, and just prayed. And because I was telling my husband, what do you want? And we're going to pray specifically down to the T. And we just started praying, and he gets a random phone call on a Tuesday and says, hey, we've got this one job at Fort Bragg you may or may not be interested in. Would you like to come? And he's like, yeah, I'd love to hear about it. And found out about it, says yes 2 days later when he receives the official offer. That Friday, I'm getting excited because I'm like, oh, we're moving home. Like, if we got to leave Nashville, at least we're going home. And I am looking up the house address because I haven't memorized. Like, if I move home and going to buy a house, I'm only buying this house. Girl, I found out that house was going to auction in 7 days. 7 days. I had 7 days to figure out what that even meant because this is, going to the courthouse steps, you got a bidding cash, all that kind of stuff. It was going to auction the day after I was planning to speak in my hometown and I was already flying home. I already had plans to be there because you have to bid in person. You have to go to the courthouse steps. I was one in 12 men that stood there. My dad came to back me up to paying cash to bid on it. And
Oh my goodness, what a story.
like that it lined up. And
That just gave me chills.
a year
God.
a year after that, we go through the adoption process three times in a couple month period. It doesn't work out. I'm vlogging all this online.
I'm sure it was greatly discouraging.
Oh,
So
devastating.
people that are going through the adoption process right now, can you give them a word of encouragement?
One of the best things someone told me that hurt my feelings the most is decenter yourself. You're not the victim, but you have the opportunity to be the blessing, to bless and release them, to acknowledge that when they say no, you may have been the ticket that empowered them to say, I can say yes. And what a ministry that is. And I truly believe, and people have told me over and over again, that if it's meant to be the right child that needs you at the right time will find you. And I believe that wholeheartedly. And I think you have to cling to that God is perfect in his timing. He is orchestrating things we can never see or imagine.
I heard a saying, what God has for you, he won't allow it to miss you. I truly believe that's the heart of God. If we're seeking him, we have to be seeking his heart, his will, his desires, his plans, his purposes. But if we're truly wanting what he wants, I don't think he's going to allow us to miss what he has for us. He's not that kind of God.
Okay, I had one dream book publisher. I had one dream agency.
I had one too. Yours.
So Thomas Nelson.
That was mine.
And only because all the Christian books I ever read was the name on it. And I wasn't pursuing it at all. I mean, I was in a dark place. We'd gone through 3 adoptions, failures back to back. We were spent financially. My daughter and I were still living in North Carolina in our home. My husband had to go to school in Kansas. So we were paying a mortgage and all the utilities, all things at home, and then also paying for him to have an apartment out there because with, the complicatedness of an adoption process, you got to do the home study and you got to get all this stuff. So it was easier to do it in our home state with all of that because that would be the consistency. And we prayed and believed that God would sustain us if this is what we're supposed to be doing. And the crushing part of it was it didn't work out. And we still had to be separated for that year. We were supposed to follow him and then we would come back, but we didn't. By the time the third adoption fell through, my daughter's, 3 months into her routine and into school. Did we still leave and go be with him? And we're seeing our bank account be completely stretched at the same exact time. I was in the Home Goods parking lot, as we often are. And I checked my email, and I had an email from a live literary agency agent that had seen one of my posts and one of my videos that she really resonated with her. And she said, I read a lot of your captions, and I can tell you're a writer. have you ever considered writing a book? I had a book outlined years ago, back in 2017, before I ever blew out on social media and before any of that. And I said, yeah, let's do a call. So I signed with her and we came back home and I told her there was one publisher that was my dream. That was it. And they signed me.
That's amazing.
Insane, right? But
Miraculous, really.
right,
Trust me, I've been through the experience. It's truly miraculous what
insane
God did
how
for
it
you.
happened.
Yes.
Getting our house was incredibly difficult. I was like, Lord, please do not ever make me buy a house through the auction process again, because it took 10 weeks. You have to bid every time at the courthouse in cash, and you have to go by 10% every time. Okay. Then, when you buy a house, typically for us, like our military friends, you use the VA loan. Well, guess what? You can't use the VA loan on an auction home because it can't get the right kind of appraisal. So we had to get this other kind of loan. And so we have tens of thousands of dollars, all the cash we have tied up at the courthouse, and you can't use that for a down payment. It was all these things that like had to work out in order for it to happen.
Now, when you're going through all this, can you see God working, or are you starting to wonder if
Yeah, like God is, well, I kept saying, if it works out, you're going to be the only one to get the credit, because this is the most insane thing.
okay.
Who buys a house through the auction when they live in another state that doesn't do real estate? I have no knowledge of any of this. All I know is that this is the house I'm supposed to buy. And so, again, we're depleting our bank account in order to make this happen. And then a year later, what do? Deplete our bank account again on a hope. And I was like, okay, God, you did it before. You showed up for us and fulfilled it when we trusted you and depleted our bank account. But then this time, the blessing wasn't the baby, but it was the book. And so that was what was birthed out of that season. And like, I have to remind myself this all the time, because God's timing is never lost. Like, we adopted Zadie, and this is how the book opens. 5 weeks later, my husband deploys. Then we go into the global pandemic. So I'm parenting solo by myself, 500 miles away from my close family member as a first-time mom. We survived that season. We start to thrive again. Then we buy this house. Everything is going good. I get the book deal. I'm like, okay, God, we're on cruise mode, right? All the dreams are coming true. The day my manuscript was due was my husband's next deployment day. Kid you not. Like, how crazy. My book came out in February, a week before this war started. My husband hasn't had a day off since the weekend after my book came out. And he's been gone for 2 months now. And so, like, I didn't get to have the dream book tour that we all think about. I didn't get to do that because I know my greatest ministry is my daughter.
Amen.
And I can't leave her. I'm the stability for her. And when Dad got noticed and he had to leave, it obviously upends our house. I can't also be gone for 2 weeks for a book tour. And I also can't take her out of school for that long either for this. And so I'm in the middle of right now. Again, I have the greatest blessings of my life, but I've never once got to hold that without also holding friction. I'm now a mom, but I have to do it by myself in a pandemic. And we had to go to Vanderbilt Children's Hospital in Nashville, where I was told by myself, sitting in a room with a surgeon and an oncologist and a plastic surgeon, my child might have brain cancer. I had to sit there by myself because it was the pandemic. And the only other 2 surgeries happened at Vanderbilt that day was a brain surgery and open heart surgery, and me. There's only 3 doctors, though, in the whole country that could do what they did for Zadie Ann. One was at Vanderbilt. So it's like, these situations are hard, and I get angry, and I'm frustrated. And that's what the book is a lot about, is I'm carrying the friction of like, this is terrible.
Did you ever feel the temptation to walk away from your faith?
No, because it's all I had. It was the only consistent thing. I've learned by unfortunate repetition that if I am obedient in the things that seem like they don't matter, that are minuscule, then I get a blessing somewhere else. I had a thing this week where God just put something on my heart, and I'm like, oh gosh. And I don't want to do it because it feels cheesy or cringy. You're like, really? And I was like, okay, whatever. Like, I'd already got some disappointing news from my manager where a deal wasn't quite working out. And I was like, okay, whatever. What do I have to lose? One of those moments where you kind of get to the end of the rope and you're like, well, I'll do it. I don't care. And so I did it. I took the step of cringiness and awkwardness and just went for it and did it. And then the next day, my manager takes me with like this great brand deal that is 3 times what the other one I lost was for. But like, it's those things where it's like you get frustrated.
This person kept coming to my mind for a month, and I was trying to talk myself out of it because of this reason, that reason. So I knew that if I didn't do it and walk through the store, I was going to disobey God. And so I did. He is literally blown my mind by that one small act of obedience.
Yeah.
That's so honorable of you to want to be there for your daughter. and not just do what you may want to do selfishly.
Yeah.
I love that because I know what it's like to write a book. I'm in that right now. I'm not as far
You know
along.
the labor it takes.
It is so much work. I'm going through edits and I just sent it to my publisher yesterday. And so we're going to be going back and forth, back and forth. It's laborsome work where you pour your heart and your soul. Like my book's a memoir because you allow people to come in into your inner world. What you're thinking, what you're questioning, what you're wrestling with, what you did, why'd you do it? And you have to be very vulnerable.
I wrote about being sexually assaulted in the book, and I had never told anybody. Like, I had to warn my mom and my husband. Like, this is in the book. It is literally the word laborious. And you and I have never carried a child, but God had revealed to me years ago that I would birth things that were not a child. And I totally believe this book is one of those things. I talk about the difficult seasons of infertility. I hope it gives people permission to ask the harder questions and realize that having questions doesn't mean your faith means less to you. It actually may mean it means enough to you. You're willing to do the work to go through it. Some Christians have treated asking questions and wanting to reevaluate as walking away. I want to invite them to saying, I see your questions and I hear that you're deconstruction, and I want to invite you into a deeper faith with those questions because God can handle them.
If someone's listening and they're struggling with shame, what would you want to say to them?
That you are not your shame. I think that a lot of us carry shame about perfection or about mistakes we've made, or like for me, I think a lot about have I stewarded everything correctly, and shame about making maybe wrong choices, or did I miss a step, those sort of things. I think we all carry shame in different ways, but sometimes shame can become our identity without us knowing because we allow it to be this thing that festers in our life. But I want to encourage you that not only can you release it, but I know for the shame that I've carried, I have to get to the root of it before I can release it. At some point in my life, I received the idea that my body was not good. And it was echoed in culture because it was too big, it was too round. Like, I am the same size now as I was in the 6th grade. Like, I was a curvy, 6th grader. But this was in the early 2000s when it was not cool to be curvy. This was before Kim K. And I felt shame about, is my body made to be a temptation? Like, is this something I have to compensate for? Do I need to hide my body? Like, all those things. To then society telling me my body was too big, and then to finding out I can't have children. So my body's not good. The one thing it was supposed to be built to do, it can't do. So the shame I've carried for so long and still carry and work through is that my body is not good. And so I think a lot of the work that has to be done for all of us and through therapy and through discernment and prayer, and I think therapy is a great tool because it's a safe place to ask questions to help you figure out where that seed was planted. Because for so many of us, it was when we were little girls.
And there are good counselors and there are not so good counselors.
Oh, for sure.
And I went to one and I'm like, she wants me to be mad. And I could tell she wanted me to be angry about this specific thing. And I just didn't like it. But there are wonderful counselors and they can really help you dissect kind of what happened. They go back to your childhood and what things kind of formed from there. And there are amazing ones.
Right. And you can recognize the pattern of like, oh, all of my shame kind of comes to like one of this thing.
And shame is really saying you're a nobody, you're worthless, you're disqualified. It's a very general statement.
About a lot of things. I mean, you could have shame about never, like your seed could be, you've never been enough. Like your parents may have had really high expectations and you were never number one. Like, your parents expected you to be valedictorian and you were number 3. You were never chosen for sports or homecoming or like whatever. Like,
yes.
You just, your deep seated thing could be, I was never enough. But you might not know that yet. But then once you start journaling all these things that hurt, like for me, my issues with my body, my issues with health, then and you're like, oh gosh, there's a pattern here. And it was not feeling at home in my body. I was very like separated from my body because I was told it was bad and having to rework through that. And so, if you don't feel like you're enough, or maybe you feel like you're too much, or maybe you're not a minimalist, you're a maximalist, and some people make you feel shame for being too much.
Shame is the devil's tactic. Shame grows in the dark. Bring it to the light and let God free you and deliver you. And what set me free from shame was I would memorize certain scripture verses that reminded me of my identity in Him. I'm a child of God. I'm His masterpiece. Before I was in the womb, He knew me. It took work for me to overcome the shame.
Oh my gosh, years
Yes,
sometimes.
it was actually probably at least 4 years. How we renew our minds, we remove the lies, culture, what we were taught, and we replace them with the truth of God's word.
Exactly. And I think that's, I'm talking about the first step. You got to figure out what the lies are. You got to find those seeds. And then, like you're saying, that second part is what are you replacing it with? Because sometimes we replace it with other shame. Like with body, it can become an issue of then me trying to perfect this body, like going from thinking it's bad to like wanting to perfect it.
You're going from one end to the other.
Yeah, like that's not healthy either. So how do I get to this place of feeling worthy and enough in God's image and really feeling like my identity's there? But I think that is such a tactic of the devil that just gets reinforced by culture, because how do they sell us anything on the internet? Shame. Like, why to buy more makeup? Because you're worried about your bags. Like they're trying to shame you into buying something because sex sells and shame sells. Being scared sells. And you're scared of like, oh, well, maybe people don't like me because I don't have the right kind of blush. Is that exactly what they say? No. But that's seeds they're planting by thinking, if I just get this one thing,
It'll make my
Right.
face so perfect.
yeah. And it's like, no, like if we can't love ourselves without those things are never going to be.
I'm so thankful that my mom taught me as a little girl. She always really impressed upon us inner beauty and how priceless that is, having a pure heart.
Yeah, I love the saying, like you hear sometimes in the South is, you're too pretty to act ugly. Like my mom, because mom would use that phrase, like, don't act ugly. And I think about that, like in the sense that and obviously everyone, is a reflection of God and of your family. And you want to just be putting your best foot forward, not only by presenting yourself well, but presenting yourself well means nothing if you're acting ugly or being disrespectful or, not showing the love of God, as we've talked about today.
Amen. Thank you so much, Kendall. This is
Listen,
so fun.
we clearly could talk all day.
I know, right? I got a new BFF.
No, this is crazy. No, we've had such a good time. Like this. These are the kind of conversations that like get me pumped up. That I'm like, I am so grateful that there are other women that are passionate about not just using their story, but to listen to other people's stories. Because as I said, I truly believe that is how God is going to help us heal so many divides and realizing that, wow, all have so much in common if we would just sit down and talk to each other, and how God is working in our lives. It gets me excited to hear, like, gosh, if God can do that for you, if God can, show up in that way or transform in that way, like, what can He do for me or for my family? So thank you for providing this space today. I'm really grateful.
I love hearing people's stories. Everyone's story is so different. I've interviewed people that have been in maximum security prison, and God has just rewrote their story, redeemed them, restored them. And it's just awesome to see how He can take the ashes of what we created and turn them into beauty.
Yeah, He is the ultimate redeemer.
He is. Thank you so much for joining us today. Remember, when life feels out of focus, there is always one who brings clarity. We'll see you next time.